You may be surprised to hear this, but I was recently brought information that the U.S. dollar is being intentionally and systematically destroyed by the very entity we're supposed to trust the most. You might have an idea of who I'm talking about. Now hang on to that thought, and we'll see if you're right in a second. But before we get into that, you should know I stumbled across this information some time ago, and it made so much sense that I dug deeper. I learned a lot over several months, and what I found changed my entire outlook. Now I've cut through all the crap that's out there, and I use plain logic and common sense to make a full-time living, practically playing with money in the markets. So I feel it's important to tell you, I believe there could be a force at work, dead set on changing the world as we know it, and destroying the United States in a way we never thought possible. If you're thinking state governors, you might be on the right track, but to be honest, you're probably thinking too small scale. This isn't something just a president can put together. Now that may sound a little crazy. To be honest, at first I thought the same thing. And trust me, it took a lot of research to get me to this point. But by the end of this video, I think you're going to agree. And you may not want to believe who could be doing it. You're not going to want to believe who may be destroying the U.S. economy and everything we stand for, not to mention the world economy. But before I get into all that, I want to say a quick thank you for watching this presentation. Getting this video produced and out to the public wasn't an easy battle, and I bet there are quite a few people who are going to try to discredit it, and me. As you can obviously see, this is a controversial video. But honestly, it's worth the sacrifice. I think this information stands on its own. Anybody with a lick of sense would be hard-pressed to see the evidence and come to a different conclusion. Believe me, I tried. It'd definitely be easier. That said, my advice to you is simple. Check my research and make up your own damn mind. There are enough big news outlets spoon-feeding the masses prefab opinions. You don't need any more of that junk. Now, I should warn you, when you watch this video, you're going to react one of two ways. One, you could watch this video, take this information, make some simple changes to make your finances bulletproof, and probably make a lot of money. Or two, and unfortunately this is what most people do, you'll enter the denial phase. You won't be able to bring yourself to accept the hard truth. It's almost like the Jews who wouldn't leave Germany. They clung to the idea that it just can't happen here. And sure enough, it did. Honestly, you may not be ready to hear this information. My advice, take your wildest guess as to who and what I'm talking about that's intentionally destroying our dollar. You could be right, and I think it's pretty obvious, or you could be wrong. One way or another, make that guess and stick to it. It'll get you ready for what you're about to hear. So back to the matter at hand. Who's behind the systematic destruction of the U.S. dollar? Well, actually destroying the U.S. dollar is just a byproduct, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, I don't know exactly where you stand financially. Maybe you've got a honkin' John Corzine-style retirement, or maybe you're just barely paying the bills. Either way, I bet you operate in U.S. dollars. You get paid in U.S. dollars, you buy groceries in U.S. dollars, you give your kids or grandkids their allowance in U.S. dollars. Well, my friend, if that's the case, you need to hear about this. If these con artists really have a serious scheme running, the dollars you and I depend on for food, shelter, and security could be absolutely worthless. It'd make the Great Depression look like winning the lottery. Now, I know these are big claims, and you're probably wondering why you should trust me. Well, that's a pretty fair question. So first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mr. Patrick Core. For reasons that'll become obvious, I think you may want to contact me by the end of this presentation. If so, you can send me an email at resources@usdollar-collapse.com. Now, due to the sensitive nature of this video, some people may be upset or downright angry. That may sound a bit radical, but after I show you some of the evidence, I think you'll be able to understand why I say that. My one request is that you keep all correspondence respectful. But honestly, this isn't about me. It's about our entire way of life as Americans. See, for quite a while, I could feel there was something wrong. You know what I mean? Little changes to the interpretation of the Constitution here and there. Government spying laws passing without the public paying any attention at all. But still, I knew there was something up. I just didn't know what. And after seeing the evidence, I still haven't come to any hard and fast conclusions, but I've got to say it really matches with what I suspected. At the bare minimum, it brings up the big question. But before I ask you, I need you to do one thing for me. If I let you in on my suspicions, will you commit to listening to all the evidence I have to present in the next few minutes? I'm sorry, but I need you to make a commitment to yourself right now to either watch this video or close this window right now. This is just too sensitive to share with people who are only half interested in the future of freedom in America. So now you're going to get 5 seconds to make a decision. Are you going to watch this entire presentation, or are you going to leave now? If you're still here, thanks for sticking with me. You must have made the decision to watch this whole video. Now, just as a warning, I'm going to remind you of your commitment when times get tough. Please honor the promise you just made to yourself. But now that we've got the formalities out of the way, let's get to the matter at hand. With the U.S. economy on the brink of a very serious collapse, it's important to ask, how did we get here? What happened to the economy that was once the strongest in the world? And now we get into the more sinister question. Was this an accident? I think it's easy to look at individual decisions and say, maybe they made a mistake. But with some of the decisions we've seen made in the past 3 years, that's a tough thing to say. Just think about it. In 2008, the U.S. national debt was about $9.5 trillion. Now it's approximately $15.5 trillion. Now the question is, how and why did we increase our debt by 63% but only increase our GDP by 15%? It's like living high on the hog because of a tiny salary bump. You don't do it, so why should they? Now, at first, I thought our leaders were just plain stupid. But then the real question came up. Are the leaders of our country trying to build up America, or are they trying to destroy every trace of American sovereignty? And why are they doing it? But this is where you and I probably have something in common. I pride myself in being a hard worker. And not to be conceited, but I keep my mind sharp enough to learn new things. You might be surprised to hear I started off as a full-time logger. Now I'm a full-time trader. And by full-time, I mean I work mornings when I feel like it. But as interesting as finding all that out was, I didn't care too much. You probably don't either. The more important thing is some of the financial predictions I've made in the past few years. Since 2008, people have been going nuts for gold, especially. With the dollar in such a dangerous position, it's pretty obvious why. But by 2008, I'd already been buying gold and silver for 5 years. That's right, I started taking delivery back in 2003. Now, I don't say this to brag, but you don't need to be a math whiz to see I've gotten some pretty hefty returns from just that investment alone. And what's the reason for my big predictions coming true? Easy. Common sense. You see, it's so easy to get caught up in listening to quote-unquote experts that we lose sight of what's right in front of our face. Now, I'll be honest, that's what almost happened to me. But when I started looking at this evidence, things became disturbingly clear. But before we get into that, you may be wondering why I'm telling you all this. Well, it's because if I don't give you some background on who I am, I don't think you'll believe me. It's pretty surprising stuff, but I'd like to remind you, no one believed me when I predicted the real estate downturn and what it would do to the economy back in 2004. And that was 4 full years before the collapse. They thought I was crazy for turning down big money to work at a high-ticket real estate firm. And no one believed me when I said gold was going to go through the roof in 2003, when it was at $343 per ounce. But now, you know, I was exactly right. I don't like to toot my own horn, but being right has made me a lot of money. But this isn't just about things that happened in the past. Some of the shifts I've pointed out before now are pretty disturbing. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this could completely change life as we know it. Every baby boomer out there could lose their retirement. And the timing couldn't be worse. The prices for the essentials, like food, gas, and power, have been going up non-stop. The 2013 and 2014 could be rough for the rich, and it could be devastating for the average American. Imagine $10 for a loaf of bread, $5 for a gallon of milk, $15 for a gallon of gas. The sad part is this is not unexpected. Now, history has told us over and over that as the government gets bloated and useless, there is no way the economy can stay intact. To be honest, I should almost thank Obama for putting our economy where it is now. If he hadn't, I probably would never have made these financial moves that could, frankly, make me a wealthy person. I never realized that it just takes a few simple moves to make sure my family and I are provided for. Let me tell you, that helps a lot with my peace of mind. It may sound harsh, but I'm not much for rallies or demonstrations. I'm big into taking action. But let me ask you honestly, where are you on the spectrum? Are you mad at the government, but not taking any real steps to keep them from screwing you? Or are you putting financial defense measures in place so you don't lose everything? Well, wherever you're at, I give you my word, I'll show you the most, I don't know, how should I put it, the most interesting evidence I've seen about the crisis in this presentation. You see, after all the pieces fell into place for this theory, I opened my eyes and started taking a hard look at the world. But I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up for a second. Before we get to how to fix the problem, I've got to tell you exactly what is really going on in the U.S. right now. Consider this what President Obama should have said for his last State of the Union address. You've probably figured it out by now, but we could be on the brink of the most dangerous economic situation America has ever encountered. But it's not just America or the dollar that's in danger. It's the whole world. Unfortunately, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise. The world governments have been carefully orchestrating this financial scheme right under our nose, which I'll admit makes me more than just a little bit mad. For the past number of years, the government's been shifting money around between accounts and leveraging that to borrow a large sum of money. And with the short-term loan mentality they've been embracing, pretty soon we won't be able to afford even the interest on the loans. It doesn't take some whiz-kid economist to figure this out. It's simple math. We've got a $1.2 trillion deficit projected for 2012, and another $3.7 trillion of interest payments due. You won't hear this question on the nightly news, but how in the world will we be able to make that interest payment if we've already got a massive deficit? Well, this is so obvious there are plenty of other organizations who've noticed the same thing. Heck, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, William Dudley, recently announced to the University of Chicago that what exists now, and I quote here, will not last, and the fiscal authorities need to factor this in when considering what needs to be done to put the federal budget deficit and the nation's debt burden on a sustainable path, unquote. Translation, stop spending so much and balance your budget. Every American has to do it. Why shouldn't the government? I hope he doesn't lose his job for trying to talk some sense into the paper money happy Fed. You see, when you break it down, the U.S. government is just another entity. You could even call it a business. And what do you think would happen if a company went around buying the debt from small businesses just so the small business could stay afloat? I mean, sure, if it was Apple or Microsoft or some other Fortune 500 company, they could do it for a while and survive. But everyone's going to run out of money sometime. Well, the U.S. government's bigger than a Fortune 500 company, but they have to play by the same rules. They're going to run out of money sometime, too. In fact, they already have. Just think about those debt numbers we talked about a second ago. The interesting thing is all these numbers are made publicly available by the U.S. government. They're not even trying to hide what's happening. Every fiscal quarter, you can see them tacking on more and more bad debt. The most extreme example is when they tacked on debt from GM, Merrill Lynch, AIG, not to mention Fannie and Freddie. Now, just the interest payments on our debt alone sucks up about 15 cents of every tax dollar we pay. So now that you see how serious this debt is, you're probably wondering how they managed to pull it off. Well, There's one thing the U.S. government, and all governments for that matter, have got that a regular business doesn't. The U.S. government can print money. It sounds like the perfect solution, right? If you're going broke, buy a printing press, print more money. With that logic, we might as well just set up bank accounts that let you change your balance online. When you're running low on funds, just add a couple of zeros to the end. Hey, no problem. Stupid, right? But that's exactly what the Fed has been doing. Here's why it works. Since the 1950s, the U.S. has been the superpower of the world. And with the stable economy comes perks. We got anchor currency status. That's what it's called. It's also known as reserve currency as well. But that didn't make a lot of people happy. Here's why anchor currency status is so important. If you already know how this works, just bear with me for a second. You committed to watching the whole presentation, not just the new parts. Anyway, here's how it works. Most foreign countries buy U.S. dollars and hold them for anchoring, or guaranteeing their loans. And even bigger than that, it means commodities like oil, gold, and silver all trade in U.S. dollars. That might not seem like anything to get too excited over, but it gives the country who issues the currency, in this case the U.S., the ability to get basic commodities at a lower price, since we don't have to convert our dollars and lose money when we want to buy the basics. So think about it like this. When the Chinese want to buy oil, they've got to first buy U.S. dollars and then pay for the oil with that. That gives the U.S. quite a bit of freedom to print more money without having to worry about the economy imploding. But there are two important details Washington overlooked. First off, no one can raise inflation beyond a reasonable rate and expect it to maintain value. And second, if the U.S. dollar gets too weak, it'll lose its anchor currency status. And not to be an alarmist about this, but the euro has been steadily gaining ground as the new anchor currency, even in the midst of a European debt crisis. That's not as scary as what China is trying to get pushed through the IMF, but we'll get to that in a second. At first, I didn't quite understand what a big deal it'd be if the euro or the yen became the world anchor currency. But the thing is, this has happened before. In fact, it happened in England at the turn of the 20th century. Research from the University of Berkeley really shed some light on the situation for me. Here's what Avinash Prasad had to say, and I quote, "Reserve currencies come and go. Over the past 2,500 years, there have been over a dozen reserve currencies that no longer exist. Sterling lost its status in the first half of the 20th century, and the dollar will lose its status in the first half of this century. Losing reserve currency status will lead to a series of economic and political crises in the United States," unquote. And if you're wondering, this guy Prasad was formerly ranked as one of the top 3 currency analysts in the world, and the second of 25 international greats who've spoken out on the financial crisis. Bottom line, he knows what he's talking about. But one of the biggest things we can learn from history is becoming the world's anchor currency is both a blessing and a curse. It's great for the country at first, but it does something dangerous for the politicians and the people. It makes it so the economy looks like it's running on autopilot, no matter what they do. Sure, there's slight hiccups along the way, but it's kind of like the oil companies. Right now, everyone in the world must buy oil. There's just no way to live in modern society without it. No oil means no plastic, no rubber, no gas. The world would come to a grinding halt if you shut off the oil supply. And apart from a few big companies, there isn't too much competition in the oil business. Now, imagine if there was only one massive oil company. Everyone had to buy oil from them. Do you think they'd pay much attention to making their business better or increasing their profit margins? Right again, their profit margins. If they needed or wanted more money, they'd raise the prices. Well, that's about what's been happening with the U.S. dollar. Since we are the anchor currency, people have to buy our dollars. So when the guys running the printing press want or need more money, they just print more. No worries about how much we're producing or exporting. Our most valuable export has been our money. But the catch is, there's no way to keep that up forever. What the politicians must not understand is there's no international rule book that says the U.S. dollar will always be the world's anchor currency, period. Fact of the matter is, the strongest economy wins. We beat out every other country in the world for the anchor currency because we were the highest producing country. We were. Now, well, I'm sure you know at least one person who's lost their job because that job got shipped overseas. Thanks for the extra tax laws, Obama. Anyway, the point is, we've exploited the anchor currency loophole like there's no tomorrow. Washington treated it like a blank check and just borrowed, borrowed, borrowed. Look at this chart and see what I mean. See how in the 1960s we had practically no debt? I don't have to tell you, but our nation has had its ups and downs. But we've always been a hard-working people. Over the past couple of years, the politicians seem to have forgotten that. Former Intel CEO Andy Grove put it bluntly. Quote, "Success breeds complacency. Complacency breeds failure." Unquote. Now, since this man escaped from communist-controlled Hungary when he was 20, I think he's right on point here. The U.S. was nothing if not successful, except maybe complacent. And by the way, this chart just goes up to 2008. Since then, it's gotten way worse. At this point, we've tacked on another $6 trillion worth of debt. I don't know about you, but it's pretty darn frustrating for me to see how the government just keeps putting our great nation deeper and deeper in the hole. Heck, in the 1970s, we were still the creditor of the world. Now we owe the entire world more than we can hope to pay. And here's the worst part. The politicians aren't going to stop. They're so focused on the short term that they're just going to do what they've been doing, print trillions of dollars. And we both know that's not going to work. It might not seem like such a big deal, but think about it like this. If a company gives you 10,000 shares of its stock, and it only has 20,000 shares out there, you got half the company. That's a pretty big deal. But let's say the owner is trying to bring more people in, so he creates out of thin air 1 million shares of stock. It's perfectly legal, but now that makes your 10,000 shares worth nothing. Well, the same thing's happening with dollars. The more dollars that are printed, the less each dollar is worth. Now, obviously, that's bad for you and me. The dollars we get paid in, that we use to buy our food, clothes, shelter with, are worth less and less every day. But think about this. How long do you think China is going to sit back while they can see we're trying to screw them? Well, unlike the UK, they don't have too much love for us, so you'd better believe they're just waiting for the most opportune time for them to call us out. And believe it or not, they've already started planting the seeds. But don't forget, a whole slew of that debt is money the government moved around inside our system. That means it's your money. They've taken about $6.4 trillion from programs like Social Security and Medicare, and they're devaluing the dollar in the process. While it's a given that Social Security and Medicare will all be used up in the next couple of years, we're not so sure what China might do. And my guess is when they figure out that we're essentially trying to scam them, they're not going to be all that happy. And to force us to pay, they could, A, stop accepting dollars and require a new currency like gold or yuan, which is their currency, or B, devalue the new dollars so it has no real effect on what we owe them. It just unleashes a storm of hyperinflation that crushes our economy. And I don't need to tell you this, but if either of those things happen, our consumerist society will not be able to survive. But here's where things get sticky. How could information this obvious slip underneath our government's nose? Could they really be that stupid? To put it bluntly, there are only two options. One, our leadership is brain dead and they've never cracked a history book in their life. Or two, they've got a reason to destroy the economy. Now, bear with me on this. I don't want to seem like some weird conspiracy buff, but after you hear the evidence, I think you'll at least have some of the same concerns. And remember, you committed to letting me present all the evidence I found. Please don't go back on your word now. Anyway, as much as we'd all like to say Obama and the rest of our leaders are just plain stupid, I don't think that's the case. Obama graduated from Columbia University and Harvard Law, and he was the first African American to be elected as the president of the Harvard Law Review. Say what you will, but that takes some brains. And Ben Bernanke, he's no slouch either. He's another graduate from Harvard. He got in a bit easier, though, when he got a 1590 out of 1600 on his SATs. After that, he received his Ph.D. from MIT in economics. So you can't tell me he didn't get a good look at what's made so many economies and currencies fail in the past 1,000 years. And yet they still make decisions that history has shown to be, well, stupid. Now, at first I thought it was just human error, but when I found this piece of evidence, it all started to make sense. The world leaders want a central currency. That might not sound like such a big deal, but you think about this. The country with the anchor currency status has always had the most powerful economy. He who has the most powerful economy has the resources to create a powerful military as well. Right now, the United Nations isn't much more than a figurehead. Just look at how much good they're doing in stopping Iran. But if there was a central currency, they'd have some real control. Now, everyone would be required to come to them to buy basic commodities like oil, food, and textiles. Please don't ignore how serious this is. If the dollar, euro, and yuan all get swallowed up into a world currency, that could be the first step in swallowing up U.S. sovereignty, along with the sovereignty of every other nation. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Obama has seemed much more concerned with the rest of the world than the United States by the way he's done business. Many Europeans were more excited when he was elected than the people who voted for him here. Heck, he got a Nobel Peace Prize before he'd even done anything. So I'll bet if you ask him, he doesn't see killing the dollar, the U.S. economy, and the American sovereignty as a bad thing. He probably would tell you he's doing what's best. And the dangerous thing is, he actually believes it. And it's putting our very nation at risk. See, we don't just have Obama to worry about. China is throwing its weight behind a world currency. Initially, it'll be a basket currency that depends on the yuan, the dollar, and the euro, or another mixture of currencies. But honestly, once every country is buying commodities with it, how long before they unhook from those? After all, once you've removed the gold standard, it's not a big stretch to break off from other paper ones. But the biggest problem is whether that'd work to rob the U.S. of its sovereignty or not. There's no way to deny our economy is in an extremely dangerous place. See, with all the talk of tightening the belt and cutting government spending, there are some downright stupid things being done with our money. Here's my top 4 list of dumb things I've heard about the government doing. Number 4 is so low just because everyone else knows about it. Remember when the Federal Housing Finance Agency approved a $12.79 million bonus payout? And this happened just 2 years after the companies got a fat check for about $170 billion. I hate to break it to you, but it's not too hard to show your company made some money when the government is giving you most of it. Number 3 made me sick. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs spent $175 million during 2010 to maintain hundreds of buildings, and they're not even being used. There shouldn't be homeless veterans while they're blowing money on a, quote, pink octagonal monkey house in Dayton, Ohio, unquote. Number 2 hits home, just because of the future it shows with Obamacare. Back in 2010, Senator Tom Coburn called the government out on blowing $35 million to phantom medical clinics. By phantom, I mean they never even existed. But number 1 is rich, mainly because everybody tried to make it seem like some big breakthrough. After all, according to the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, they were able to slice a solid $10 billion off improper payments. Improper payments are when they paid too much, paid it to the wrong person, or paid it for the wrong reason, or no reason at all. Now, you might be asking yourself why it's so hard to get payments right. You probably don't write too many checks to the wrong people for the wrong amount, or for work they didn't do. So things must be much more complicated for the feds. Anyway, here's the truth behind the $10 billion the GAO was bragging about. At first it might sound like a lot, but here's the catch. In 2010, they messed up and lost $125 billion that belonged to the U.S. people. In 2011, they only lost $115 billion. There's your $10 billion. That doesn't sound like much progress to me. Them saying, hey guys, this year we screwed up, but not as bad as last year. Although I don't know why I'm surprised. This is what our government considers progress. If these are the kinds of strides they're making, it's more obvious than ever that they're going to be in no position at all to protect your retirement, your bank account, or even the value of your dollars. After this kind of evidence, I think it's probably clear now. You probably see exactly why I told you the proof points toward bad times for the economy. And it's just hard to believe that all these things could go on without anyone knowing about it. We've got an entire department, the Government Accountability Office, just to make sure our leaders are on the right track. So it seems that someone along the way has been turning a blind eye to let the agenda get pushed forward. Either today's American government is the most incompetent in the history of the United States, or there's something else going on here that no one wants to talk about. Any way you slice it, things are going to get bad for you, me, and every other American. The U.S. currency system as we know it isn't going to collapse. It is collapsing. And unless the average American wakes up and makes some smart decisions fast, his life savings, retirement, and way of life could all go down the tubes. So here's the question. What can you do? A couple of months ago, I would have told you the sad truth. Nothing. But fortunately, I honestly don't believe that's the case anymore. And after you look at my recommendations, I think you're going to feel the same way. I should mention one thing, though. These tips are only going to show you how to keep your finances safe. You still need to consider things like food, water, and home safety. Whatever you do financially, my plan is to keep at least 3 months of food, water, and fuel on hand at all times, and I recommend you do the same. The good thing is these tips will help give you the resources to get your hands on all of those things. Because the reality is, the government isn't going to take care of you in the coming crisis. We've seen the ways they've been failing in everyday life, let alone when we're facing Zimbabwe-style inflation or nationwide food riots. But before I show you my top wealth protection strategies, you probably want to know, how much is this going to cost? After all, there's always a catch. You can't get something for nothing. Well, when I sat down to figure out what to charge, it didn't take long to figure out the price. After all, these 4 strategies alone could be the difference between saving your retirement and financial future and watching it all get flushed down the tubes. To put it bluntly, it's any small business owner's dream. Like it or not, people have got to buy what you're selling. Knowing that, I think you'll understand what I'm about to say next. We decided that these 4 tips are going to cost you. It's a surprising price, but I think you'll understand. These 4 tips are going to cost you absolutely nothing. See, the problem with all these financial experts, so-called, is that they want you to pay them a ridiculous amount of money before you get a glimpse of the magic strategy, unquote, that they're teaching. I don't know, maybe we're breaking all the rules here, but it just makes sense to me. Now, if you're interested, after these free tips, we'll tell you a little bit about the full-length guides we put together, which are available for purchase. But honestly, you could walk away with just these tips and secure your financial future. And the best part is, even if I'm wrong, you can still use these tips to make sizable gains this year. Now that said, be sure to stick around for the rest of this presentation, not just because you committed to it, and you did do that, but I've got one crucial tip I couldn't squeeze in until the very end. Whether you invest in these first tips or not, you'll find the last tip very useful. But enough with the suspense. Here are the 3 exact steps you should take. Step 1 is going to sound a little scary, maybe even unpatriotic to some people, but I think you're going to agree it's important. The first thing you've got to do is get your retirement out of the hands of the government. And one of the best and completely legal ways to do that is to get your money, or at least some of your money, offshore. Now, A lot of people get fidgety when you start talking about offshore accounts and investments, but consider this for a second. Washington quietly started the retirement ball rolling back in 2010. You can look it up in the Federal Register, but you won't like what you see. The gist of it is, the Department of Labor and the Department of Treasury began, quote, reviewing the rules under the Employment Retirement Income Security Act, unquote. Why, you may ask? This is rich, so they can, quote, determine how they could or should enhance, by regulation or otherwise, the retirement security of participants in employer-sponsored IRAs, unquote. Translation? So they can rewrite the rules any way they want. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes me pretty nervous. We all know the government's hurting for cash right now, and we've seen how they take care of government-sponsored programs like Social Security. And the scary part is this is already happening in Europe. Alex Jones from InfoWars reported that Hungary essentially extorted its retirees to try to make up for the budget shortfall. According to this report, retirees had two bad options. They could either hand over their private retirement to the state and get the meager state pension, or they could lose the right to the state pension and, here's the kicker, and still pay for the state pension out of their private retirement. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's also happened to one degree or another in Poland, Ireland, even in France, and that is just in the last couple of years. But here's why you need to do this like yesterday. You may have heard of a, quote, retirement expert, unquote, by the name of Teresa Ghilarducci. She's been working the kinks out of an idea that would help Americans avoid the risk of the stock market. Imagine investing your money and knowing you're going to get at least 3% back every year. Not terrible, but you're a sucker if you accept getting as low as 3% back on your investment. But there is a catch. The government gets to manage it. And oh yeah, it's mandatory to put your money into this pension. As in, it's your money, but they tell you where you must invest it. Now, I don't know about you, but I earn a whole lot more than 3% on everything I do. And I sure as heck don't want Washington to have 100% direct control over my retirement. Other retirement accounts, such as 401k and IRA, will still be, quote-unquote, legal under the Ghilarducci plan, but they lose all the tax breaks they get now. So which option do you think employers are going to contribute to? You got it. The state-run sham of a retirement account. They don't really have a choice. But the good news is you can diversify and grab offshore accounts without too much of a hassle. Now, there's a ton of great information out there about very reasonably priced offshore investing, so I'm not going to go into that too deeply here. But one thing I do want to tell you, the U.S. recently passed a very, I don't know, what's the best way to say it, economically stupid bill. It's called the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, FACTA. Long story short, it's a bad sign. It shows Washington's trying to lock down investors and keep money in the U.S. by legal force if need be. Whatever you do, you need to get your retirement somewhere the U.S. government can't reach it. But let's move on to the next step. Hopefully this is something you've already started doing, but step 2 is get your hands on the world's real currency and its undervalued cousin. Obviously, you've heard a lot about gold and silver over the past couple of years. In fact, the U.S. Money Reserve has predicted that gold will hit $10,000 an ounce. But the really interesting thing is what silver has been doing. You might have heard of the silver ratio. It simply states that gold is normally 16 times the price of silver. So that means if gold is $1,800 an ounce, silver should be right at $112.50. But the reality is, it's closer to $35 an ounce. I don't mean to get too excited, but history is never wrong. There are really only two options here. One, gold crashes. That's possible, but not probable in a time where world currencies are getting hammered and people need tangible assets. Think about it. Is there any reason you would suddenly want to unload your gold in the next 6 to 12 months? Heck no. So that leaves option 2. Silver catches up with gold. So that means if you spent $10,000 on silver today, when the price catches up, you'd make $775,000. That's almost a 7,700% return on investment. Those are the kinds of gains you want to see. But one word of caution, be careful what you invest in and who you invest with. My biggest piece of advice, stay away from large dealerships and numismatic or rare, unquote, coin dealers, because they mark the gold up as much as they can, and they know since you're going to make the money back in the next couple of years, it still looks like a good investment to you. So find yourself a private gold dealer you can work with one-on-one. I've got some recommendations, but I don't have their permission to put their contact information all over the internet, so you'll have to get in touch with me if you need their info. But whoever you go with, just make sure you take delivery on your gold. Actually, touch it. If you can't touch it, you don't own it. There are a couple more gold buying tips I think you should know about, so in a second I'll tell you more about how you can get a free copy of a report by the name of Gold Scams Exposed. But even more important than that is step number 3. The reality is there are some commodities that can't be physically held. But these are staples that have no choice but to increase. We're talking commodities like oil, wheat, corn, beans, etc. And this is another no-brainer. In 2007 and the first quarter of 2008, we were in a full-blown world food crisis. High oil prices, droughts, and using food for biofuels were all cited as reasons for the food crisis. But you can't expect a piece of paper to match up to real goods when there's nothing backing it. The bottom line is, as the dollar crashes or even dips, it'll drive the price of things like oil, food, and textiles straight back up. And if you're smart, you'll put yourself in a place to capitalize on that shift. So, now you've got the basics for getting in front of some of the biggest moves that could hit the U.S. economy in the next 6 to 12 months. And like I said, even if something miraculous happens and the economy stays afloat, you'll still stand to make a tidy profit. But now, I've got a question for you. Are you relying on the government to save you if the economy goes south? You know they're not going to be able to handle even a little dip in the economy. But if you don't take action to protect yourself, that's the same as putting your trust in them. I know, that's harsh, but you know it's true. The reality is you've got 2 options. 1, you can be a bystander who's forced to beg to eat. Or 2, you can be one of the patriots who saw what was coming and is in a secure position. You can be one of the patriots who made a couple of small changes that made all the difference. Sure, it'll be tough either way, but you won't be worried about going hungry or losing your life savings. But before we get any more into how you need to prep your finances, I've got to come clean with you. I haven't been telling you the whole story in this video. Now wait, before you get angry, let me explain. It just wouldn't fit. Over the past few weeks, I've been putting together a package of bleeding-edge research. You've heard some of the big pieces in this video, and it already goes about an hour long. But there's just no way that we could fit all this research into one video, and in fact, I don't know if the general public could have handled it if we did. Now, I refuse to beg, but I'm going to ask you this just once. Please take a look at the rest of the materials I put together. I honestly believe you'll have the information you need to make your finances secure. After all, you've already seen a couple of my tips. Are you interested in seeing the whole thing? And the best part is you can take a look at every ounce of my research risk-free. Here's exactly what you get a chance to see. The main research report is the U.S. Currency Collapse Survival Guide. Without going into too much detail, this is the guide that'll give you the basics on how to survive a big collapse of the dollar. But even more important than that, it'll show you what to look for before the collapse comes. It's not quite as good as a crystal ball, but most people have no idea they should be looking for these signs. See, the thing about a collapse of the dollar, or any major world currency right now, is that once it happens, well, of course, it's too late. And beforehand, you've really only got a couple of options. Make the wrong choice, and unfortunately, your money's gone. The problem is so many, quote, advisors, unquote, out there are really just trying to sell you on their financial vehicle, whatever that may be. Well, you should know, after reading this guide, many people will probably want me to move their money around for them, but I don't do that. All the strategies in this guide come straight from what I've done with my own money. If you're committed, you can get them in your hands and hopefully move your finances over before things get too far down the road. But to get you up to speed as quickly as I can, there are some other crucial guides that I'm throwing in for free. The first bonus research report is the one dirty trick the government can use to legally steal your 401k, IRA, and gold. I'll tell you, this is something you have to see to believe. Suffice it to say, there are some big reasons you don't want the proposed government retirement accounts to go through, unless you want the feds to legally control your entire retirement. If that happens, let's hope your account doesn't look like Social Security right now. In case you're wondering, it's flat broke. Next, one of the coolest research reports I've put together. But I gotta warn you, it's extremely time sensitive. We call it 2 Sound Strategies to Profit on the Election Chaos Effect in 2012. It's pretty obvious that there's a lot of uncertainty with the upcoming election. If Obama gets reelected, the economy could tank just because of the lack of confidence investors have in him. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities to ride the wave and profit in the short window between now and the 2012 election. Third is a research report that, well, it was sad to produce. After taking a hard look at the U.S., I've come up with What's Wrong with America Today. Now, this guide is almost like a translation guide for all the news speak that the media tries to shove down your throat. A way to find the truth in the middle of their flowery presentations. We've already talked about some of these issues in this presentation, but unfortunately, there's more to America's problems than that. This guide will dive deep into them. Now, these 3 bonuses will give you the tools you need to protect yourself from the government and recognize what's really going on. But to make this more complete, I've put together a couple more research reports I think you'll really be interested in. Next up is the Patriot's Ultimate Crisis Investment Guide. Now, gold is a good investment, but that's not what we're talking about here. I don't want to create too much competition for this opportunity, but I think you'll be very interested in this investment. Oh, and by the way, this guide goes into exactly how to do this on your own. This isn't some sales pitch for my investing services. I typically don't even offer any. The last research report is one of the most important, actually. Gold buying scams exposed is going to make some gold sellers pretty mad, but it's going to save you a lot of money. Just to let you know, this guide sells for $49.97 right now. Obviously, this is costing us money to get it to you, but gold is such a vital part of your portfolio, we had to include it. Now, before you get your hopes up about this research, I've got some bad news. There aren't a whole lot of people out there willing to publish something this truthful. But that's where I come in. Believe it or not, I've published quite a few controversial reports on everything from survival to green power. And when I did this research, I knew I had to get the word out. Just a warning, though, with the cost of putting something like this together, I can't give it away for free. In fact, it's quite a bit more than you might expect to pay for this type of research. But rest assured, for anyone who can't afford the investment right now, I've worked out a plan. I'm going to let you in on my top tip to protect yourself against the coming U.S. currency collapse scot-free. Just stick around. Like I said before I gave you all those free tips, these complete research guides are available for purchase. Now, unfortunately, the fact that I'm not giving these research reports away offends some people. Now, if this was just something available on a website, I could maybe understand why you'd want to get it for free, but there's 2 things most people forget about. First off, it's not publishing that costs the most money, it's getting the word out. I truly believe this information's so important I need to tell as many people as possible. But the unfortunate thing is that for an independently owned small publisher, that's a pretty expensive process. I've already put a lot of money into telling people, and it's not something I can afford to keep on doing. It'll drive me broke. But the second reason I think you'll understand maybe a little more. It costs money to get these reports produced and mailed. I've got shipping and handling down as low as possible. It's at $5.95. I'm not one of those big publishers who gives away, quote, free shipping, unquote, and then charges you extra for the reports. However, I want to be upfront with you about exactly how much these research reports are worth and how I came up with the price. But I should warn you, getting these guides published wasn't easy. The problem is there are no publishers interested in spreading the word about these guides. In fact, most of them wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. They're just too truthful, and the government does not want this type of information getting out to the public. Think about it. If Americans realize what Uncle Sam is up to, it could ruin big government's entire plan. Or, best case scenario, put Americans back on their feet without becoming a communist nation. So that means I'm having to do things a little different. If you've ever published a book or guide, you know it's an expensive process, especially when you look at how many guides and bonuses you've got here. In fact, the value for this guide and each one of the research reports can be broken down line by line like this. The U.S. Currency Crisis Survival Guide is worth $49. The one dirty trick the government can use to legally steal your 401k, IRA, and gold would go for $29. 2 sound strategies to profit from the election chaos effect would run you about $29 as well. What's Wrong with America Today would sell for $17 on someplace like WND Store. The Patriot's Ultimate Crisis Investment Guide could be a standalone report for $37, and Gold Buying Scams Exposed sells for $49.97 right now. That's a grand total of $210.97. Not bad when you consider you could learn to protect your savings and way of life for less than a car payment. Like I said, that price may be a little more than you'd expect to pay for research like this. But let's be honest for a second. With the way the economy is right now, some people don't have an extra couple $100 lying around. Not to be personal, but I've got no idea if you can afford something like that. And as your fellow American, I want to help you even if you can't. Plus, do you really think the government would let something this drastic and embarrassing for them stay public for long? And this is too important to be silenced. Heck, I've spent thousands of dollars of my own money getting the word out about this project, and that's before I've published a single guide. It's obvious I'm not rich. You can tell by this low-tech video. And no one can keep spending money forever, so the $200 price seems pretty reasonable. But I'm going to go out on a limb here. To try to make this available to you and all the other Americans serious about this, I've come up with a way to get the price down quite a bit. By bundling all the research reports together instead of producing them separately, I can drastically cut my costs. But to be honest, you don't really care about my costs. The benefit for you is you can get the U.S. Currency Collapse Guide along with the 5 bonus reports for $49.97. Just the price of the U.S. Currency Collapse Guide alone. Click the orange Add to Cart button now. FYI, clicking that button won't charge your credit card. You'll have a chance to review your order in the cart. But there's a catch. If you're one of the ultra-rich and don't need a method to protect your finances, retirement, and life savings, please leave this resource for people who really need it. And let me warn you, if there's not enough interest in how to protect your finances, even if the dollar crashes, I'm going to pull the U.S. Currency Collapse Survival Guide and the 5 free reports off the market. It's not worth the hassle for me if the American people aren't going to take this financial crisis seriously. I can just quietly protect my own assets and turn a blind eye to what people will have to go through. But if you're ready to find out how not to just survive, but profit from the financial collapse, click the orange button below now. By the way, your order will be processed using the most advanced and secure 128-bit SSL encrypted server available, the same kind that Amazon, eBay, and the banks use. But I realize some people are nervous about purchasing online. After all, there are quite a few scammers out there. Or maybe after buying the U.S. Currency Collapse Survival Guide, you remember an important bill you got to pay, and you need your money back. But if the U.S. Currency Collapse Survival Guide is something you'd actually use to get ready for the coming financial crisis, I want to help. Here's a way that might work. What if you could get the guide and bonuses free for 60 days before you decided if you wanted to keep them or not? Is that something you'd be interested in? Well, here's what you can do. Get the guides to check them out. Then read them, use the simple financial and investment strategies, Even prepare your family for the crisis and get your retirement in line. And if for any reason you need your money back in those 60 days, just send me an email and I'll refund the whole product price as soon as I get the product back. Now sure, that means some people are going to take advantage of me. But honestly, I trust my fellow Americans. After all, if we can't trust each other, who can we trust? Just to spell it out, here's my guarantee in writing. And where it says no questions asked, it really means no questions asked. You don't have to give a reason for why you don't want the product. And there are no loopholes and no restocking fee. Once you send the product back, you'll get a refund for the entire purchase price. Oh, FYI, I'm an official NRA Business Alliance member and Better Business Bureau member as well. They've checked me out and they've cleared me. Now, before you make your decision on whether or not this simple currency collapse survival course is for you, there's one more thing you might want to know. Some people might think you're weird or overprotective for buying the U.S. currency collapse survival guide. Heck, some people in my own family think I'm batwing crazy. But don't let them put you down. Whether they realize it or not, what you're doing today could save their lives. Honestly, I don't think anyone seriously believes our economy is going to go back to the way it was. Those days have been and gone. And when their money isn't worth the paper it's printed on and they're out of food, you'll have a variety of assets and be secure. Who do you think they're going to come to when this happens? You got it. And you won't even say I told you so, will you? On another note, don't worry about the package the U.S. Currency Collapse Survival Guide comes in drawing too much attention. You'll get a discreet-looking package in the mail, no flashy stickers or other junk. So now that we got that out of the way, it's time to make a decision. If you're confident beyond the shadow of a doubt that there's no economic crisis and you don't need to know how to survive any type of financial disaster, well, leave this page right now. But if you're even a little bit unsure, let me ask you, are you willing to chance losing everything and having to work well into your 70s because you wouldn't take a risk-free look at a couple of guides? It's your decision. Hope to see you on the inside. Click the button below now to continue. But one last thing. Remember when you agreed not to let the normalcy bias set in? It happened less than an hour ago, so I hope you haven't forgotten already. You agreed to actually do something about the evidence, or you were going to close this video. Well, now's the time. If you think the evidence points toward anything other than a collapse, I disagree, but I can't argue with your honest opinion. However, if you see that the evidence is pointing straight toward a collapse, same as I do, keep that promise you made to yourself and take action. Take a look at these research reports. If you get them and honestly think they won't help you, you can call me for a refund. But you made a commitment not even 60 minutes ago, and I gave you my word I was going to remind you. I've already shown you I'm true to my word. So here it is. Take action to protect your family and your finances. What it comes down to is this. If you don't think the evidence points toward a collapse, you're fine. But if you do, I don't see how you can not take a look at these risk-free research reports. I hate to have to put it like this, but you've got to remember, this isn't a decision you can put off until tomorrow. You've seen how quickly things are happening here and around the world. Even mainstream media is picking up on it. So click the orange button now to continue to the secure checkout page. Think about it like this. If you had a chance to walk into a Barnes & Noble and read through these guides before you bought them, would you? You could look through them and see exactly what I believe is coming for the U.S. economy, even the things the government isn't talking about, and it wouldn't cost you a dime. Is that something you'd be interested in? Well, that's essentially what you got a chance to do here. You can take a look at these books, and if you feel like they'll help you protect your finances and way of life in the economic craziness, you pay for them. If not, you send them back and don't lose a dime. So if you'd be willing to look at the books in Barnes & Noble, why wouldn't you do this? Click the Add to Cart button below now. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about my promise to show you one of my biggest predictions on a wealth shift in this crazy economy. It's pretty obvious when you think about it. There are about 313 million people in the U.S. All those people need to eat, and quite a few of them eat for free.
About 1 in 5 Americans are on food stamps at last count. So it's obvious we need quite a lot of food to feed this mob. But the problem is less than 1% of the population is involved in farming. And by the way, we're losing farmland. Now, Fox News reported that, quote, lack of acreage in the U.S. will usher in a significant food shortage, unquote. And as much as I recommend buying gold and silver, there's one thing that will become invaluable: food. After all, you can't eat gold or silver. Most people have no idea how to hunt. Well, maybe they got in the hang of fishing. But we don't have enough wild game to support 300 million people, not by a long shot. So if you put yourself in a position where you own a significant plot of farmland or other agricultural investments, you'll be ready to get some substantial gains. Not to mention, you'll have a guaranteed food supply tucked away off the beaten path. So that's it. I've kept my word and stuck to my end of the deal. So I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you in or out? Do you think the government's going to save you or not? If you're serious about taking your financial future and protecting your way of life for your family and country, click the orange Add to Cart button below. If not, well, don't say I didn't warn you. You've got a chance to join me as I take real steps to protect our families and finances. Click the orange button to start now.